You need to show me some identification right now, or you will be arrested.
I don't have to show you anything. You are trespassing. Get off my porch now.
Pay attention to the woman standing on her front porch. Her name is Valencia Green. She's 32 years old, a registered nurse at Columbus Medical Center, and she's been living in this house in the Hilltop neighborhood for 6 years. It's 7:45 p.m. on a warm Saturday evening in July. Valencia is waiting for her teenage daughter to come home from basketball practice. Now, pay attention to the white sedan pulling up to the curb. The man who steps out is Officer Derek Moss. He's been with the Columbus Police Department for 11 years. He's responding to a call about a suspicious vehicle in the area. Within 20 minutes, this routine welfare check would spiral into a confrontation that would cost him his career and expose a pattern of abuse that had gone unchecked for nearly a decade. This was not about public safety. This was about power. Valencia Green had worked a double shift that Saturday. She'd clocked out at 6:30 p.m., driven straight home, and changed into comfortable clothes. Her daughter Imani was due back by 8 p.m. Valencia stood on her porch with a glass of iced tea, scrolling through her phone, enjoying the evening air. She had no reason to feel unsafe. She was standing on her own property. Officer Moss approached the property line. According to his later testimony, he was investigating a report of a suspicious vehicle, a dark sedan that had been circling the block. Valencia's car was a burgundy Toyota Camry, parked in her own driveway. Moss called out to Valencia. He asked what she was doing there. Valencia looked up from her phone. She was confused. She told him she lived there. She was standing on her own porch. Moss demanded identification. Valencia asked why. She was on her own property. She hadn't committed a crime. She asked the officer to explain what he was investigating. That's when things escalated. At 7:52 p.m., Valencia's Ring doorbell camera began recording. The footage shows Moss stepping onto the Green family's lawn. Valencia is holding her phone in one hand, her iced tea in the other. Her body language is calm, but firm. She's asking clear questions. She's not raising her voice. Moss is gesturing with increasing agitation. He's pointing at Valencia, then at his patrol car, then back at Valencia. His voice is audible on the recording. He's telling Valencia she's being uncooperative. He's threatening to arrest her for obstruction. Valencia sets down her iced tea on the porch railing. She pulls out her phone and starts recording too. She says clearly into the camera, "I am Valencia Green. This is my home. I have not committed a crime. I am asking this officer to leave my property." Moss does not leave. At 7:54 p.m., he steps onto the porch. Valencia backed toward her front door. She told Moss he was trespassing. She told him she was going inside her home and closing the door. She told him if he had legitimate business, he could come back with a warrant. Moss grabbed her arm. The Ring camera captured everything. Valencia's phone, still recording, fell to the porch floor. The audio is chaotic. Valencia shouting that she was being assaulted, Moss yelling commands to stop resisting, the clatter of the iced tea glass shattering. Moss forced Valencia face down on the porch. He put his knee on her back. He handcuffed her. Valencia was screaming. She hadn't resisted. She hadn't committed a crime. She was on her own porch. At 7:56 p.m., a neighbor called 911 to report that an officer was assaulting a woman. At 7:58 p.m., Imani Green turned onto her street and saw her mother in handcuffs. Valencia was arrested and charged with resisting arrest and obstructing official business. She spent 4 hours in custody before being released on her own recognizance. The charges were eventually dropped, but the damage was done. Valencia's shoulder was dislocated during the arrest. She had bruises on her wrists and face. She couldn't return to work for 3 weeks. The physical injuries healed. The psychological trauma did not. But Valencia Green was not going to be silent. The Ring footage went viral within 48 hours. The video was clear, time-stamped, and damning. Valencia had not been aggressive. She had not been uncooperative. She had asserted her rights calmly and clearly. Moss had no probable cause. He had no warrant. He had no legitimate reason to be on her property. The Columbus Police Department launched an internal investigation. What they found was worse than anyone expected. Officer Derek Moss had a history. Over 11 years, he had been the subject of 17 complaints. 12 involved allegations of excessive force. 10 of those 12 complaints came from black residents. 7 came from black women. The department had sustained only 2 of the complaints. Moss had received written reprimands. He'd been required to take a 3-day de-escalation training course. He'd never been suspended. He'd never been demoted. His personnel file showed a pattern, but the department had treated each incident in isolation. Valencia's case was different. The footage was undeniable. Internal Affairs examined Moss's body camera footage from the night of the arrest. Moss had not activated his body camera until after he'd already grabbed Valencia. The ring footage contradicted his incident report in multiple ways. He'd claimed Valencia had been verbally abusive and had attempted to strike him. The video showed neither. The investigation expanded. Internal Affairs pulled body camera footage and incident reports from Moss's previous complaints. Patterns emerged. Moss routinely escalated encounters with black residents. He routinely failed to activate his body camera until confrontations were already underway. He routinely filed reports that characterized victims as aggressive when footage told a different story. On August 15th, the Columbus Police Department terminated Officer Derek Moss for gross misconduct and falsifying official records. It wasn't enough for Valencia. Valencia hired civil rights attorney Keisha Albright. In September, they filed a federal lawsuit against Officer Moss and the Columbus Police Department. The complaint alleged wrongful arrest, excessive force, racial profiling, and systemic failure to discipline officers with histories of abuse. The lawsuit detailed not just Valencia's arrest, but the 17 prior complaints against Moss. It argued the department's failure to meaningfully discipline Moss had created a pattern of constitutional violations. It sought damages and systemic reforms. The department fought the lawsuit initially. They argued qualified immunity. They argued Moss's termination proved they took misconduct seriously. Then, 3 more women came forward. In October, Attorney Albright held a press conference. 3 black women stood beside her. Each had been arrested by Officer Derek Moss under questionable circumstances. Each had filed complaints that had been dismissed or minimally sustained. Each had footage, body camera or cell phone, that contradicted Moss's reports. The cases shared eerie similarities. Traffic stops that escalated without clear cause. Demands for identification without reasonable suspicion. Arrests for obstruction when individuals asked questions. Moss targeting women alone. The press conference was covered nationally. The footage was devastating. The pattern was undeniable. On November 3rd, the Columbus Police Department settled Valencia Green's lawsuit for $850,000. More significantly, they agreed to a consent decree requiring sweeping reforms, mandatory body camera activation policies with strict penalties for violations, bias training for all officers, creation of an independent civilian review board with subpoena power, and quarterly public reporting on use of force incidents broken down by race. Valencia had not just won her case. She'd forced institutional change. Officer Derek Moss was indicted on 4 counts of felony assault and 12 counts of official misconduct in December. His trial began in March of the following year. The prosecution's case was methodical. They presented the ring footage from Valencia's arrest. They presented body camera footage from 3 other incidents. They presented expert testimony on use of force standards and racial bias in policing. They presented internal affairs records showing the department's failure to discipline Moss despite repeated complaints. The defense argued Moss had feared for his safety. They argued he'd been trained to control situations and that his actions were consistent with department policy at the time. The jury didn't buy it. After 8 days of testimony and 4 hours of deliberation, Derek Moss was convicted on all 16 counts. In May, he was sentenced to 6 years in prison. Valencia was in the courtroom when the verdict was read. She didn't celebrate. She cried. Valencia Green still lives in the Hilltop neighborhood. She returned to work at Columbus Medical Center, though she now serves as a patient advocate rather than in direct care. The physical demands of nursing were too difficult after her shoulder injury. She speaks regularly at community forums about police accountability. She works with the Civilian Review Board established as part of her settlement. She mentors young black women who've experienced police misconduct. Imani Green is now 19. She's studying criminal justice at Ohio State University. She wants to be a civil rights attorney. The Ring doorbell camera still hangs on the Green family's porch. Valencia has never taken it down. She says it's a reminder that truth matters, that technology can hold power accountable, and that one person standing firm can change a system. On the porch railing where the iced tea glass once sat, there's now a small plaque. It reads, "No one should have to prove they belong in their own home." Valencia Green refused to be silent. She refused to accept that this was just how things were. She fought back, and she won. The Ring footage that started it all has been viewed over 40 million times. It's been used in police training sessions across the country as an example of what not to do. It's been cited in legislative hearings on police reform. It's been shown in law school classrooms and civil rights seminars. Valencia's voice remains steady when she talks about that night. She doesn't glorify what happened. She doesn't minimize the trauma. She simply tells the truth. Officer Derek Moss is currently incarcerated at Marion Correctional Institution. He'll be eligible for parole in 2027. The other officers who appeared in the body camera footage presented at his trial have all left the Columbus Police Department. Some fired, some resigned under pressure. The Civilian Review Board Valencia helped establish has investigated 127 complaints in its first 18 months. It has sustained complaints and recommended discipline in 43 cases. The Columbus Police Department's use of force incidents declined by 31% in the year following the consent decree. Change is slow, change is difficult, but change is possible. Valencia Green was standing on her own porch, minding her own business, when power tried to assert itself without justification. She didn't back down. She didn't stay silent. She held up a mirror and forced the city to see what it had been allowing for years. That Ring footage still plays. That truth still matters. That moment still resonates. Valencia Green is still here. She's still speaking. She's still fighting. And she's still standing on her own porch.